are going to be making a coil pot. I am going to show you how to use the coil method to make a vase or something like that. So you will get your clay in chunks. You will have a board to work on so that you can pick it up and move it easily. I am going to take a chunk of clay and first just kind of wad it up. You'll have something that looks kind of like this. And then you're going to roll it out to make your coil. So I'm just going to start. The goal isn't to press it down to get it as skinny as you can. You're just barely adding pressure, but you're making the coil longer. So you're pushing the clay out to make the coil longer. When it gets really long, you can use 2 hands. You want to try to make it even in thickness. You don't want it to get really thick in one place and thin in another, because then it won't come out evenly. So you're just going to roll it back and forth. You can see how it's still really thick right there? Just want to keep rolling it back and forth. The first coil you do, you want to be pretty long. That's because this is going to be the base of your pot. Okay, so I've got my coil. This is kind of thick at the end and I really don't need it that long. I'm gonna pinch my edge in so that at the end it'll curl nice. I'm gonna rip off this edge too. So now I've got a coil that's pretty even, and I'm going to start rolling it up. Make sure you're kind of pressing it together as you go so your coils are stuck together. You want your base to be a pretty good circle, so if your coils aren't even, then your circle won't be. So make sure you try your best, and we're not perfect, but try to get your coils basically the same thickness. If it's really obvious that you've got a really thick area and a really thin area, it's not going to work. Okay, so I've got kind of just a nice base here. It makes a nice circle. You can tell where I had pinched in the edge. That just helps it to kind of blend seamless. Now we're going to smooth it out because we don't want our coils to show. So you can either work going out from the center out or from the edge in. Doesn't matter. And just take your finger and start lightly pushing down to smooth out your clay. You can use tools to help smooth out your clay too, but you've got to get the big part smoothed out, and I think your finger is the best way to do that. Smooth it out. Gonna flip it over, smooth out the other side. Doesn't really matter which side you choose to make the inside of the mug and which side you choose to make the outside. You just want to make sure your base is basically a nice circle. And smooth it all out. Be careful with how much pressure you're putting when you do this. If you put too much pressure, you're going to change the shape. Now I might want to change the shape, like if I look right here, I've got a little bump. You can kind of lightly tap it and get the bump to go away. If you have bumps, just lightly tap them. Right here I've got a little bump. Got to smooth this little edge out a little bit more. You should have a nice round disc. You can take this tool. This tool is great for smoothing things out. And just kind of lightly scrape. You can tell it just kind of scrapes everything to a nice smooth surface. Same thing on the other side if I need it. Okay, so once I've got my base done, I can start making coils to add on top of it. Same thing, you're just going to rip off a piece. Your coils don't need to be as long here. So you don't need to use as much clay for each coil. It doesn't work as well to take them and roll them in your hand because they get really uneven and they'll get really thin. And then your artwork will be really weak. So you don't want that. Okay, so you can tell this coil is not as long as my last one, but I've got my thickness pretty even. Really pay attention to that thickness. It's so important. And I'm going to scratch the surface right along this edge. This is called scoring. In ceramics, we call this scoring when we scratch the surface. I'm using a toothpick. You will have toothpicks and paper clips in your clay set. They do the same thing. And I'm going to dip my finger in water and I'm going to lightly wet. This is what we call slipping. It helps bind two things together. I am going to start my coil. I'm going to pinch one end like I did last time. Pinch one end in. Then I'm going to start my coil. Bring it around. You can kind of spin your platform that it's on if that helps you. Let's actually pinch this end in too, so it'll go up easier. So see, that just kind of falls right on top of it now. So right now, I'm just making it go straight up. So I've used this coil. I'm going to make another one. Now I'm going to start making it go out because let's say you want it to curve out. The same thing applies if you're wanting it to curve in. So you're going to make your coil. Do not rush your coils. If your coil is not equal in width, or if you get it too thin, your whole piece is going to fall apart. So do not be sloppy. Okay, I'm going to pinch my ends. We're going to start it right where the other one ended. You can tell it'll just fit right on top. Now, if I wanted to make it start going out, instead of just setting it directly on top, that will make it go straight up, I am going to lean it out just a little bit. So I'm just going to go around and gently lean it out. Okay, so I'm going to take a break from the coiling part. I'm going to coil one more little piece. I'm just going to do a little coil real quick to try to kind of even out this dip. Alright, so now I'm going to take a little break from coiling and I'm going to smooth out the inside of my pot. I'm not going to worry about the outside yet because I can do that all at once. You can use something like this, you can use your finger, and you're just going to go around and first kind of work in the crease. When you're smoothing out the inside or the outside, you always want to have one hand bracing so you don't lose your shape. Otherwise, it'll just keep pushing the clay out. And then the other hand smoothing. So again, you can use a tool or you can use your finger. It's up to you. What works better for you? And you are going to start smoothing out the inside of your pot, being sure you're bracing it with one hand. You may need to use a combination of both tools, or of your tool and your hand, to get it smooth. And it may not be perfect at first. Just keep working on it, but make sure you're bracing the outside with your hand. You can see it's starting to get smooth instead of coiled. So the reason you stop at the beginning after just a few coils is because it's going to be really hard later to get your hand in there to smooth it out. And again, just use a combination of a tool and your fingers. You want to push the clay up. So I can keep working on this. I can come back to it later, or I could smooth it out more now. But you can see my coils are disappearing. I'm going to go ahead and stop and move on so that you all can see me make a little bit more progress. I'm just going to do a very small pot, just to give you an idea. Don't worry if it's slightly, like I've got a little bump right here, but later, you know, just like I said before, you can tap those bumps back in and get things all symmetrical. So I'm going to roll out another coil. I'm going to do 2 more coils. I'm just going to do something real small. I'm going to use small coils for now so I have more control over what I'm doing.